Well, the haters gonna hate, 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 and the faker's gonna fake, 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 baby. I'm just gonna make, making luck, a Dominion podcast.
Welcome to Making Luck, a self-reflection podcast.
Yeah. I'm Jake, and I am here as always with Mr. Adam Horton.
Hey, what's up?
How is everybody doing? Oh wait, you can't respond to me.
Well, we'll give him a minute. How are you all doing? Oh, that's great. Good to hear that.
Yeah.
Sorry to hear about that. Just covering all the responses.
Great to hear that / sorry to hear about it, depending on what you said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Making Luck, an interactive podcast.
Yeah. We're pushing the envelope. So, we have an episode here today. This comes the Monday after the weekend of Adam's latest 3-player Dominion tournament. It was IRL with physical cards. People actually showed up and looked at each other while they were playing Dominion. Can you believe it?
Some of them even spoke to each other.
That was rare, though.
It was nutso.
Yeah, and so we are going to give a really brief recap of that and talk a little bit about it. And just about the tournament scene in general, and we're also going to talk about the card Bishop.
Yeah, that's it, man. It's a good card. It's an okay card. We're going to talk about it here on Making Luck, a self-reflection podcast.
Yeah.
a mutual trashing podcast.
Yeah. So overall, how would you say the tournament went?
I was super happy with it. As an organizer, really what I want are just a few things. First of all, I want people who show up to have fun. Second of all, I want the winner to have played well. And third, I just want as many people as possible to show up, because that means I'm doing my job well. And I think for the most part, we had all that stuff. All the people I talked to seemed to be having fun. And then the person who won played 8 games and won 7 of them. Got second place in the last one. So that was a pretty convincing performance.
I got to play against him, too. He handed me a pretty resounding defeat, too.
Yeah,
he played very well. Shout out to Nate. That's his name, for winning the tournament. Congratulations on playing some very good games at Dominion.
Yeah, and you want to know the only person to beat him all day?
Who's that? Oh, is that Jessica?
Yeah.
Yeah, so my girlfriend was in the tournament too, and shout out to her as well. She did fantastic. She actually got 3rd place in the entire tournament of 31 people?
31 people in the tournament, and she got 3rd.
Yeah, so she made... And
so she cashed.
These are good people, too. These are not just, scrubs off the street playing Dominion. These are people who, you had somebody fly in to come play in this tournament.
Yeah.
And so, she definitely is never allowed to say she's not good at Dominion again, or...
We have solid evidence that that's just a load of crap.
Right, so she... Oh, I didn't, by the way, make the finals. She destroyed me! Congratulations to Jessica for, doing so well, winning some money. And congratulations to Nate for winning the whole thing. And, of course, congratulations to everybody who showed up and played, because it was a really good tournament.
Yeah, special shout-out to the other people who cashed. Second place was Ryan, a.k.a. Pierce Boker. He got 2nd place, and he's going to be going on to Gen Con since Nate won't be able to make it. It's a bit of a hike for him.
Sure.
And also, for 4th place, we had A. Hoppy and a gentleman named John from the area. And they split 4th place and didn't bother to play a tiebreaker game because,
I think it was late
just
at that
split
point.
the money. Yeah. So, those 4 people played very well to get the top 4 out of 31 people.
Yeah.
That's not an easy thing to do. There were a lot of people that showed up to the tournament that, I didn't know were coming. I mean, an RSVP isn't something that's required, but, it took a while for people to start showing up to the tournaments that didn't tell me about it beforehand. And I think that just means that word of mouth is getting out, and the fact that, I had 23 at the last tournament, and that was my highest turnout, and now it's 31. So, the fact that it's getting bigger at that rate, and people seem to be talking to each other about it, that's what I was really happy about. I expected 24 to 26 people, and we got far more, and I was able to accommodate it, and I mean, if this trend keeps on going, I think Dominion, at least in this area, is going to be really great. There were a couple of people who were there because they heard about this on the podcast.
Yeah.
So shout out, I remember it was Sam, who specifically told me that he listened to the podcast and was like, hey, that's like a half an hour drive from me. I'm going to go to that tournament. And then he showed up. So shout outs to you, Sam. Thank you for listening to the podcast. And also, just, I don't know, I was really ecstatic with the number of people that turned out.
Well, and part of the reason that, like most of the people who have showed up to a tournament of yours come to the next one too, I think, like, because, like, they're pretty good. They're well organized. They're they're in a good format that, like, you definitely take a lot of measures to make sure that people don't get, like, off or irritated by at the tournaments too, and, like, there's some interesting designed kingdoms to take a look at. So the tournaments are a really good time. Definitely recommend that you make it down for the next one, which is going to be in 6 months, right?
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah.
Assuming that I'm able to do things other than care for a crying child at that point in my life, I will be hosting a Dominion tournament, and it's going to be 2-player games, which seems to be what everyone prefers, except the publisher. Hey, hey, publisher.
You listening?
Everyone wants 2-player. JSYK.
JSYK.
Yeah. But I thought I would at least, I have a blog post that hopefully will be published by the time this episode goes out. Right now, the blog is crapping all over itself. The blog post is written, but it's going to talk about the design kingdoms I had for the finals. There are a few of them, and if you want more detailed comments on all of them, you can check it out. We'll link the blog post in the description of this video, as well as all the other places. But I thought we'd at least read through one of them and give some brief comments on it.
Yeah, so all of Adam's designed kingdoms are kind of like a mad scientist creation a little bit. So, like, they're really fun to play through, and you should definitely think about setting these up on your table and playing them out, because there's always something that isn't quite as it seems, I found. There's always something you play out, it's like, oh dear God, in the middle of the game. So, yeah.
I have a lot of different types of ideas, and mainly throughout all of that, it's important to me, especially for the design ones, that it tests your skill. That there's an opportunity for a skilled player to show that they have skill and win the game through that skill. So, here's an example set where I think that's sort of, I tried to exemplify that. So there's Puka, Shepherd, Baron, Miser, Counterfeit, Border Village, Village, Gladiator, Royal Seal, Armory, with Lost Arts and Inheritance. Once again, for our audio-only listeners, sorry, that's not in cost order. My bad. Puka, Shepherd, Baron, Miser, Counterfeit, Border Village, Village, Gladiator, Royal Seal, Armory, with Lost Arts and Inheritance. And I think it's important for this kingdom that we mention the fact that you are able to stack your deck at the start of the game.
Right. You get any opener you want in Adam's tournaments.
So that was actually, I don't normally do this kind of thing. I thought I'd try it out here, where if you stack your deck and get an insane opening, then you can do some really great stuff. And so you can use the Curse Gold from Puka, along with 4 coppers on turn 1 to get Inheritance on turn 1.
You could open Inheritance, yeah.
And then you have 3 estates in your next turn that you have inherited on turn 2, and that's pretty stinking great.
Yeah.
So, like I know you do that,
what would you do?
but there's like 5 different inheritance targets here. So beyond I'm going to stack my deck to get 7 on turn 1, it's not really certain what you do beyond that. So,
yeah. That's really interesting. Let us know in the comments what you would be doing here. And my wheels are... I didn't get to play this one because it didn't make the finals. But but I would really be interested to hear what different people's strategies are and how they would approach this kingdom.
Yeah, so there's no way to trash the curses that you get from Curse Gold. And the only way to trash your Curse Gold is by counterfeiting it, which gives you 2 curses. So that feels pretty bad. So however many times you choose to play your Curse Gold and whether or not you choose to keep it around, that's another crunchy decision you have to make.
Yeah.
There are, I think, 6 possible inheritance targets here.
Yeah.
Shepherd and Baron look super sexy to inherit because they have synergy with estates.
Yeah, but man,
But that's not
you have
actually good.
Then be discarding the estates, which are inherited, and that hurts.
So that's not actually good, but it looks super sexy.
Okay.
There's Armory, which is fine. Gladiator, which is also fine. However, Miser, I think, and Village.
I was thinking about Miser, actually.
I'm not
the one I would
sure which
maybe
one
go
is
for.
better. It was hard to play test this because online you can't stack your starting deck. Can you maybe get on that? But anyway, I'm not really sure which of Miser and Village is better. I'm leaning towards Village, but like inheriting Village on turn 1 and then playing 3 estate villages on turn 2, like it doesn't seem all that great.
Yeah.
But like I think it's the best thing.
Well, okay, so like part of the reason I might even start to lean toward that is that like putting your Lost Arts token on Miser seems really good here, and
it is good, but it doesn't make your estate Misers non-terminal.
That's why I'm thinking maybe inheriting Miser is meh, because like you want to put the Lost
Village
Arts on it,
and then put your Lost Arts on Miser, your real Misers,
and then have like your terminal space to be used on probably Gladiators, but that seems.
It seems like you'd want Puka.
Yeah, well, but
that's not good, by the way.
Trashing the copper.
It doesn't work. Yeah, so this is really crunchy, and I wanted to make it super crunchy. And I played this a few times, and I built some really terrible decks. And like,
good.
I wanted the potential for that kind of a humbling experience to take place. But like a really skilled player who can build an elegant deck the first time, that's something special. And anyone who was able to do that probably crushed on this board.
Yeah.
Shout out to Nate, winner of the tournament.
Yeah.
I don't know what he did, but whatever he did it better than
the other
his
two people
opponents
playing,
because I know he won this game.
Yeah. So that was really interesting. I'd be interested to see people play that kingdom out.
Yeah.
And speaking of kingdoms that we're interested to see play out.
Oh, yeah. There was some, what was it, marinara sauce? Or
there was some
cheese?
Carbohydrate. It was pasta for fale.
Yeah, that was the first one, but like the last one was
garlic bread. So we had some garlic bread of Last Kingdom when we were talking about when yellow equals purple. And if you remember, this kingdom was selected a little different from the past. Usually we figure out our concept and roll into a kingdom that is going to fit it. But this time, the episode was on when treasures are really bad, and I rolled into a kingdom randomly playing online where treasures are really bad, so I just took a screenshot and we saved it for this kingdom.
Yeah, like I rolled 10 kingdoms and yellow did not equal purple in any of them.
Yeah, so we found one where it did.
Yeah. We had to do a little cheateroonie here, but yeah, why don't you read those cards to us?
Yeah, okay, so this kingdom in particular had Lighthouse, Hermit, Farming Village, Ironmonger, Poacher, Ronger, Workers Village, Bridge Troll, Farmland, and Harem. Once more for our audio-only listeners, the kingdom had Lighthouse, Hermit, Farming Village, Ironmonger, Poacher, Ranger, Workers Village, Bridge Troll, Farmland, and Harem.
Alright, so I think both of us agreed that Hermit Ironmonger was a good opening, if you can manage it.
Yeah. Which was interesting because, like, you'll see if you see the video, like, we couldn't for the life of us not open 5-2 here. We rolled this kingdom how many times? And
55.
I feel like we got 5-2, like, 75% of our games. Yeah. Which was kind of crazy. But, yeah, Hermit Ironmonger, I think, was a really good opener here.
Right. And I think, you want Bridge Trolls. Bridge Troll split is super important.
Yeah.
Jake advocated for a build where you go heavy on Hermits and Madmen.
Yes.
And use that for your draw. And I like the idea of a build that involved Workers, Village, and Ranger for the draw. Still getting Madmen, but not quite as heavy. Like keeping 2, maybe 1 Hermit in the deck at most times so that you can gain those delicious 4 costs if you have a Bridge Troll out.
I think actually both builds can work, and I think they can actually work at a similar speed.
Yeah, I think it's pretty close for sure.
Because bear in mind, relying on the Madmen for draw is more acceptable when your payload is something like Bridge Troll, something that's going to explode in one or two really big turns. Because like the Madmen are gone, but it doesn't matter because you've piled out and won the game or gotten an insurmountable point lead or something like that. So that could happen, but then again, relying on Workers' Villages and Rangers for draw. It wasn't super clear which one of those was more reliable or faster. I think we both kind of leaning toward the Workers' Villages and Rangers overall having the edge on relying on Madmen. But it's not clear-cut which one of those was better.
I think that getting the Workers' Villages and the Rangers will help you win the Bridge Troll split.
Yes.
So if you're being contested, that's going to be better for you.
Yeah.
If you're not going to be contested, you're going to win no matter what you do. But I could see the Hermit build being a little more, maybe a little faster in some cases.
Right. I mean, I like the build that's going to give me the highest chance of victory against an opponent who is also doing what's in my mind the best things for him. So
that's usually what you build towards in two-player games.
So, like, I am going to lean toward the Workers' Village and Rangers, but, like, it's not like a black and white thing, too, because the Rangers, or the Hermits, once you have a Bridge Troll in play, are also helping you gain Workers' Villages and Rangers. So, like, how many Hermits you want in the deck at any given time is not a super easy call. And then you get into these situations where, like, wow, a Madman would be amazing for my deck right now because I have the terminals in my deck, and I could just have this fantastic turn. So I can get a Madman, or I could buy a Bridge Troll. And, like, which one of those is more important? How many Bridge Trolls are left? Like, there were some really weird decisions you ended up making on this kingdom.
Mm-hmm. I mean, there's another situation where, like, you have a bunch of Workers, Villages, and Rangers in play, and enough Bridge Trolls that you can gain a bunch of cards that way. So, I mean, sure, you may end up with either one of those turns if you get lucky. I mean, if you play smart, you're going to beat the guy who doesn't play smart. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Make sure you get points so that you don't lose on piles.
Sneaky 3 pile is definitely something you always have to watch out for on a Bridge Troll board, where Bridge Troll's any good.
As for yellow equaling...
Piles kind of evaporate.
Right. As for yellow equaling purple here, I think yellow, when we talk about that, is Lighthouse, because Lighthouse is something you would pretty much buy over silver in all cases, just because Bridge Troll's out, and it has the durationness, which is a super minor benefit, but non-zero.
So yeah, I mean, like, the Lighthouse has the advantage over copper or silver if you're building with Ironmongers, because you'd probably rather have the action than the dollar at a certain point in your deck's life.
I opened Ironmonger on 4-3, but I think that was the only Ironmonger I would ever get. I just want Workers' Village because those buys are super important, and, making sure you get those actions is also super important, I think. I really don't think Ironmonger is good past the opening. And I think the only reason you get Ironmonger is so you have the shot of hitting 5 on turn 3 or turn 4 and getting that Bridge Troll early on.
So, in defense of Ironmonger, I will say that there is no way to get rid of the coppers other than farmlanding them into something that's bad. There's no way to get rid of the coppers, really.
I farmlanded a copper in a game I won.
Yeah, but that's not why you won.
I was desperate for points.
Yeah, that's not. So, did you win that game?
I did.
Or was that the one where? Okay.
And then you were gonna get the duchy to tie me in points, but it didn't matter because I had that farmland. Power farmland.
There we go.
It was so good.
Yeah. So, in defense of the Ironmonger, like, given that there's no way to really clear out those estates, and they're really in the way, or the coppers, and they're really in the way of the coppers. Like, the Ironmonger, in addition to potentially being a village, or it can also cycle for you. It can discard the coppers from the top of your deck. Of course, then it's not guaranteed to be a village if it does that. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're pretty tight on terminal space here.
Yeah.
So the reliability of Workers' Village was something that I liked having.
Yeah.
As for, so when does Lighthouse equal purple here? Is there a place for Lighthouse in the deck? I mean, you can't trash the coppers. It's hard to actually thin your deck here.
Well, and silver and gold, of course, didn't factor in too for the same reason, but yeah.
Well, I mean, not silver because of Lighthouse, and not gold. Probably because of Bridge Troll. So, Sure. Bridge Troll's much more important than gold. But, is there a place for Lighthouse in the deck? And I'm not convinced that the answer is no. So, like, we found this one because it's got a lot of the signs, those flags that tell you, hey, yellow might not be great here. And by yellow, of course, we mean lighthouse. But even then, like,
We
I think
also
there's
mean silver and gold, but yeah.
Yeah, but even then, I think there's a place for 1 or 2 lighthouses in the deck because you're getting hit by bridge troll attacks if you're being contested, and that matters a lot.
Yeah, you have a really low... So, like, bridge troll is really high explosive payload, but your payload in terms of, like, coins is really low. So that means, like, proportionately losing out on a coin from bridge troll is a much bigger deal than if you were building a deck that had, like, silvers and golds in it. Like, because your coin totals that you're generating every turn are really low, so that bridge troll attack is painful.
Mm-hmm. And I think especially early on, like, you're going to have a lot of chances to pick up a lighthouse. And putting the lighthouse in the deck is going to help you hit 4 or 5, or, you know, if costs have been reduced, buy those 4 costs and buy those 5 costs. When your turns aren't super great and you don't have multiple bridge trolls out yet. And, like, that's where the game is won and lost.
Kinda, yeah.
So, I mean, that extra dollar could mean the difference between a 6-4 bridge troll split and a 5-5 bridge troll split, and that's game decisive.
Yeah, getting 6 bridge trolls here was very, very suggestive that you were going to win the game. Really, honestly, there were a few times where you really didn't even want a bridge troll in your deck, but you bought it just so you could get your 6th one and deny it to me.
Right.
And it was, I think you won those all the time. Yeah.
If you don't screw up, you win those games. There was one game I stalled at a bad time and also didn't get points, and I think I played it poorly, but I mean, sure, it's not 100% if you get 6 bridge trolls, you win the game, but it helps a lot.
It's a huge advantage, yeah.
So yeah, that was that kingdom. I don't think Poacher ever saw play. Harem only ever saw play when I was trying to hit exactly 55 points against the bot. Farmland was pretty narrow. I played maybe 10 games of this kingdom. Bought a farmland when I wasn't trolling a couple times. Oh, there was that one turn where I had 6 bridge trolls out, but I didn't have enough money for provinces. But I kept the cards in my hand, and I bought 8 farmlands for 0 and got the provinces that way.
Okay.
Farmland mattered there. We did it, guys.
Yep, you found a way for farmland to matter.
Yeah. Farming village was good as a village when you didn't want to lower the workers' village pile.
Yeah, like that was... The farming village was strictly worse here than the workers' village, except that sometimes the workers' villages are about to run out, and that's scary.
Yep. And farming village, you're executing more steps in general, and so if you want to get your APM up, your actions per minute, if you're playing with the physical cards, that can be relevant for you there.
Yeah, definitely.
And Poacher was bad.
Yes.
Good times.
All right, so that was a pretty good sum up of that kingdom.
Yeah. I think so.
Yeah, so today we're going to talk a little bit about Bishop.
So before we do that, there was something that I think we forgot to do, and now that we forgot to do it, we're just going to do it now, maybe?
Yeah, shove it in there.
Yeah, so Jake took some videos at the tournament of some people that were at the tournament, and we wanted to show you some snippets of those videos.
Yeah.
And just let you see what it's like there. So if you're on the video podcast, you'll be able to see video as well. But, you can listen to the audio, and you may recognize some of these people as members of the community in some way. Or you might not, and that's the joy of IRL tournaments.
Well, and the other cool thing that's about these videos is that one of them is of the person who actually won the tournament, so you can hear his take on it. We had some interesting conversations about the difference between IRL play and online play, which I'm sure many of you can relate to. And we also were fortunate enough to get to talk to somebody who has contributed to the development of the client, and he got to talk a little bit about some of the features that he helped implement and how that's affecting your games today.
Yeah. So yeah, let's watch those bad boys.
Yeah. So, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
I am pretty good. You came out here for the Dominion tournament?
Yes.
Have you played your first match yet?
Yes, I did. I completed the first one and came in dead last.
Nice.
It was great.
All right. So, where'd you come in from?
I came from Chicago.
Oh, cool. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, how long have you been playing Dominion?
I think think I started playing right around whenever Interlands came out.
Okay,
I don't know how long that's been.
nice. Do you have a favorite?
while.
Do you have a favorite card?
I don't think I do, actually. It would probably be King's Court, actually.
King's Court?
Just because it makes games insane.
Yeah, degenerate.
Yeah.
It's amazing. So you were saying earlier about how you actually, for the online client of Dominion, had actually developed and created something that got added to the client. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah, so I created a Chrome extension called the King's Courtier,
Okay.
which the name came solely because I wanted it to be named off of Dominion cards. But basically, it originally started because I really missed being able to look at the kingdom as a set of cards all at once. So I started out and I was like, cool, well, I've got all of these images, so let's just go ahead and slap that in there.
Okay.
And then basically it was just like minor annoyances that I could find with the client, like being able to see if you have duration cards in play, or like if you have things on your mat, and just like adding in small things like that to just make the game a little bit easier to play without really cheating or anything.
And is everything that you developed in that respect fully integrated into the client now?
About half of it is. So
Okay.
the Kingdom Viewer has been integrated.
So this is who you can thank for that, by the way.
Yes, they actually brought me on when they were updating the client to a new stack, and basically asked if I wanted to contribute anything to the official client. I was like, yeah, this seems useful.
Yeah. All right.
So the other stuff has not been, but if I ever have free time, then maybe.
So but people can, these other features you're talking about that make the game easier to play, they can find these and download these and add them themselves to their Chrome. So where can they go to do that?
You'll probably want to edit that in. I
Okay.
don't actually know offhand because it doesn't have a fancy website or anything.
We will leave a link in the description, but highly recommend that you download the rest of the King's Courtier plugin and just make your games of online Dominion a little bit easier, thanks to this gentleman right here.
Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, so props to Nick
Yeah.
for seeing something about the client that was not up to standard and helping out. That Kingdom Viewer is something that, first of all, there's no other way to like view kingdoms, like just view all the card images for every expansion of Dominion besides doing that. And like that's something I use for every single episode of the podcast, as well as like my life.
Well, I use it too. I definitely, whenever I make a video, I use it, and it makes my life for making videos quite a bit easier.
And your viewers' lives easier too.
Yes, definitely. Huge contribution there. And also, he came out to the tournament, so that's pretty awesome too. So props to him.
He's actually part of a group of friends I made from my second Dominion tournament.
Yeah.
So they came to the tournament, and they lived locally in Cincinnati at the time, and so I started going to their game nights. And him and a couple other people who I met through the tournament, we became friends. Then they moved to Chicago, so every once in a while I go up and visit, and they still make the hike down here to come to Dominion tournaments whenever they can. So like that's a level of dedication that some people have for the tournaments.
Yeah.
That's not a short drive, and of course they have family in the area. But like it was really great to see them over the course of the weekend. Friendship is magic, and we were, I've made friends through the Dominion tournament.
It's a magical place.
Because I'm not a completely awful person.
Not
Just
yet.
a mostly awful person.
Right.
Yeah. I have some redeeming qualities.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Like this podcast.
Like kind of this podcast.
Yeah.
All right, one more.
How you doing?
What's up?
You want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm hey Internet World. I'm Sir Slugma, aka Nathan Wallace. That's my actual name.
Nice.
And I came here from Pittsburgh to play some Dominion.
All right. How are your matches going so far?
I won both of them. It's pretty good.
Nice.
I can't complain. Probably got a little fortunate the second one, but I had a good time.
Yimyosel.
Yes.
So
That's right.
you have been playing Dominion for about how long now?
I started 2010 or 2011, somewhere around there.
Okay.
It was like just started getting into like modern board games and stuff.
Yeah.
Played lots of Settlers of Catan, And then one day someone's like, hey, I got this cool card game. It's called Dominion. I was like, all right, let's do it. And then we played like 3 different games, and I was like, oh my god, I have to buy this.
Yeah.
So it kind of spiraled out of control from there.
Nice. Yeah, no, that's how the addiction starts.
Usually how it goes, yeah.
Yeah, no, I had a similar story myself. So you have come out to a couple of these in the past. And this is, how many tournaments is this for you?
I think this is the 4th time,
Yeah.
maybe 5th?
Nice.
4th or 5th.
Yeah.
I haven't been out for over a year, so it's exciting to be back.
Well, there's always some stiff competition.
The beautiful
too.
confines of Cincinnati, Ohio.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that unironically. But the you had made some comments earlier about just the differences you've noticed playing in person versus online. Just you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so obviously if you're in a tournament, you feel the pressure to some extent of that situation. And in addition to that, you don't have your magical point counter in front of you. You don't have your beautiful red boxes that tell you exactly how many cards are in a stack. So if you want to know when the pile's low, you got to go count them yourself. And it makes it a lot harder to quickly and accurately, or confidently at least, assess those decisions.
Yeah.
And that's pretty interesting. It was tough in our game that we just played,
Yeah. Oh, you destroyed me, by the way.
where, well, destroyed is a little generous, but you had a pile-out chance and it just didn't happen because you didn't get the draws. But I left the piles open because I didn't assess all the information, the points,
Yeah.
the piles, quickly enough to make that assessment when I was just buying some stuff.
Right, and that's a mistake you might not have made online, but you make these mistakes in real life just because it's a different kind of experience you're not used to, right?
Yeah, it's just you have a lot more ways in which you can miss information.
Yeah.
You can miss stuff online, but it's right in your face.
Yeah.
You can make that decision faster, and you can make it better.
Yeah, which is interesting. It's a different experience. I don't think it's a better or worse one, but I'd say there's a place for both. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I think that certainly when you're playing in person, you sacrifice maybe the efficiency and the simplicity of an interface
Yeah, right.
for the excitement of feeling the cards, human interaction, all that stuff. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, and there's when you have something like a sneaky 3 pile you didn't see coming, there's that can happen online, and it feels pretty cool to when you know your opponent. But it's different when you can visibly watch your opponents be surprised by something
I'm
like
sure
that.
that's a good feeling.
When you reach down and
It's
count the
rough on the
piles
other
and you start counting them, and then your opponent's face just changes
You're like, oh, no.
because you started counting. Yeah, it's interesting.
That's pretty good.
So, you've been playing Dominion for a while, like you said. Do you have a favorite card?
Favorite card?
I know. Pick one.
My go-to whenever I think of this question is probably one that not a lot of people would say.
Okay.
Which is just because I just think it's so much fun.
Yeah.
And it's probably busted and, not always the best balance and a little swingy, but I love Scrying Pool.
Scrying Pool, yeah.
Because obviously drawing 1 billion action cards is a great time. And the first couple times I did that, I was like, this is amazing. This is what it's all about. This is why I'm here.
You've got your deck in your hand, and you're like, this is why I love this game.
Got my deck in my hand, and then I'm going to play Storm and discard it all for money and draw it back.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't happen too often, but
It can, though.
it can. It's
Especially
fun.
with Scrying Pool. I have a question about that card. Do you ever play with it IRL versus online?
I've played it some IRL.
Yeah.
The slowness, of course, can be a thing. That's why I would say it's maybe a more controversial or unusual pick, but I just like it. It's just it's a fun card to play with. It feels good.
Yeah, a lot of people, with Alchemy in general, strongly prefer it online to in person.
Yes.
There have been a couple of Podcast Kingdom boards where Adam and I were playing in person, and we played it once, and we were like, oh, there's Golem here. Let's go to the client now and just do no more games of this
Let's
in
not
person.
sit through my entire deck a million times.
Yeah, this is taking the games turn into 40-minute affairs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like cards like that in person to an extent because I like stuff where you're sifting through your deck and you get to kind of see physically more of what's happening.
Yeah,
It's automated less, and that's kind of appealing.
There's a tactile experience to it, that you maybe don't get online when you play Dominion.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, anyway, thank you very much for recording some footage for us and for coming out to the tournament. Hope you continue to have good luck in your matches, and hope to see you in the finals.
I hope to be there.
All right, later.
Yeah, he was in the finals, wasn't he?
He definitely was. I did not see him though.
Oh.
But yeah, no, he obviously he played very well in the tournament. It was good to get his insight too after our games, and just the difference between IRL and online play is, I think, something that gets lost on people if they don't partake very much in the former.
Yeah, I really like playing with the physical cards. A couple of reasons. First of all, that human interaction thing.
Yeah.
That's important to me. I like
Yeah.
interacting with people. But also, like, I mean, I sit in front of a computer all day at work. So if I sit in front of a computer, it just feels like work. So getting in front of the, physical cards is just a different experience for me. And that feels a lot better.
Yeah, so like this is an interesting part of board gaming in general. We've gotten into a lot of implementations that are online because people want to be able to play board games without the, logistical limitations of meeting up and setting it up, etc., which is valid. But like you run into this with video games a lot too. It's really easy to forget that there's a person on the other side of that screen. And this applies to all board games and definitely Dominion as well. Like, the game itself kind of feels fundamentally different in a lot of ways without that human element.
Yeah, I mean, there are some friends I play with Dominion with where it's okay to just get super competitive. And then there are other friends I would play Dominion with that they would prefer to talk while they play. Or they would prefer to try and have a good time and focus a little less on the result of the match. And, maybe I'd win more of those games because I'm still trying to play well regardless. But it's a different experience, and that's the experience that got me into the game.
Yeah, well, to that point, definitely, most people who play this game and have played IRL have, like, certain memories attached to cards, certain stories, like inside jokes about cards, things like that, have shaped their experience, and maybe they even understand from a strategic standpoint, like, what a card's significance is, but it has a different significance to them, and that really kind of only happens when you're playing IRL.
Yeah, I don't know if we're going to keep it in, but in the background of one of those clips, you can hear a gentleman yelling "Festival" quite loudly.
Yeah.
And that's what playing Festival means to him.
Yeah.
And, I mean, it means something else
and to
to
everyone else in the store while he's there.
Right, it means something different to those people as well. And
yes.
that's all part of the experience.
Yeah, it really is.
Awesome. Do you have a favorite card?
I think Festival's a decade. Festival's one.
Festival. Classic.
It really is. I mean, like, Rats and Magpie definitely had that for me, too.
I mean, it's one thing to click on Rats a lot on a computer, but it's another hand to physically show your opponent a hand of all rats. That's just a completely different thing.
There's an
nothing
experience
like it.
Either way. Yeah, there really isn't.
There's nothing like it.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing.
IRL Dominion can have that magic. Yeah,
that's magic. Oh yeah, so I was just gonna say this earlier.
Yeah.
So, like, you know how we're gonna RSP this podcast. If a bishop is giving you meat, then he could be maybe giving you, like, if it's a Catholic bishop, perhaps,
oh God,
the body of whatever deity. I don't want to get in trouble by saying anything like that.
Yeah.
But what he actually gives you is a wafer a lot of the time, which is kind of bread. So there's this kind of meat-bread dichotomy we have going on here for bishop.
It's interesting. I think we assume that it's a Christian bishop, but, like, this is the land of Dominion. How do we know if they're Christian? They could be worshiping somebody else entirely. This could be, like...
the spaghetti monster?
Yeah, this could be a Rastafarian.
Which is a Pastafarian.
A Pastafarian
Which we're
bishop.
going back to carbs. So, like, there's the carbs and bread and meat trichotomy.
Yeah.
We're really getting into those topics.
And if you ignore theme...
You're just going to lose games at Dominion that way, man.
Yeah, so... we have a card called Bishop that we're covering here.
Hey, Bishop.
And it is from the Prosperity expansion. And Adam, would you like to read the text of that card?
Yeah, I got you. So it's a 4-cost action. It gives you a coin, and it gives you a VP token. And then it says, trash a card from your hand. +1 VP token per $2 it costs, rounding down. Each other player may trash a card from their hand. So it gives you $1, and then it gives you VP tokens based on the cost of what you trashed to a minimum of 1. So it does two things, right? It trashes cards, and it gets you VP tokens.
Yeah, and it's really good at one of those.
Yeah.
And it's really bad at the other one.
Yeah. Which one is it good at?
So Bishop is fantastic at scoring points.
Oh, I love points.
Bishop is really bad at trashing cards.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to say this, and like, if you take nothing else from the rest of this episode and you just stop right here and come away with the sentence, Bishop is really good at scoring points and really bad at trashing cards, you're going to have like 99% of the functional knowledge you need to play Bishop competently on most boards that you're going to see it, I'd say. Of course, as always, we're going to do our best to go into the whys and not just the whats and the hows, so that we can, be analytical and try to glean greater insight into the game. But if you just remember it's really good at points and really bad at controlling your deck and trashing cards, you're going to be like 90% of the way there.
90.55% of the way there.
90.55% of the way there to mastering Bishop and what it can do for you.
In terms of scoring points.
In terms of scoring points. And also trashing cards, which isn't much.
Sure. Yeah, let's get into what it's like to trash cards with Bishop.
Yeah.
So, like, you play an action, and you lose that action to play the card, and you trash one card from your hand. So, like, yeah, that gets the job done, but, like, that's not particularly fast, and you're getting $1 for it, so that's not a particularly fantastic benefit. I mean, yeah, you're getting VP tokens.
Yeah.
But those don't matter until the end of the game.
Right, so using a develop to trash a copper or something, like, sometimes we do it just because we need the thinning, but, like, Bishop is even worse than that, even though it's giving you the $1. Like, to understand why, to understand that Bishop is so bad at trashing cards, you really need to understand the why of it, I'd say.
Yeah, so that's some of the why, but I think the biggest portion of the why has to do with the fact that when you play a Bishop, your opponent can just trash a card from their hand. They didn't have to do anything. They didn't have to buy a Bishop. They didn't have to put it in their deck, draw it, spend an action to play it. They could have bought better cards, and now it's because you play this Bishop, they get to thin. Just as much as you. They get to thin the same number of cards as you.
And, like, we really want to come back to a concept we've covered in the past where, like, the opening few turns, you're trying to get control of your deck, yes. And trashing cards is a great way to do it, but it's not just about getting control of your deck. It's really important to remember that the first few turns are kind of a race or a contest for that deck control. Your deck control really matters in relation to your opponents in most cases. And, like, in the case of Bishop, especially early on in the game, when at any given time, you and your opponent are both really likely to have cards in your hand that you want to trash, like, you're helping your opponent as much as you're helping yourself. And
yeah, like, your opponent's getting the better end of this deal.
Yeah, because they're looking
off.
at 5 cards to trash, and you're only looking at 4.
And they didn't have to draw the Bishop, they drew a good card.
Right, they built their deck in a different way while you did the thinning for both of them. So, like, it's really bad in terms of that. If you look at it in terms of, like, you're helping your opponent as much as yourself, it's kind of like you're not making any progress at all. You're just speeding the game along in a neutral way.
Right. If anything, without any other factors, it's a net loss for you on that tug of war. Very slight, but you're not getting the good end of this.
Sure.
So, like, with all that said, I mean, we can find some value in this, and we can find ways to tip the scales in our favor if we want to use Bishop for the purpose of thinning cards.
Yeah, and, like, we're talking about using Bishop as a trasher in terms of, like, controlling our deck. We're trying to get control of our deck, and Bishop is the trashing for that. Mm-hmm. Well, one of the ways is when we're in a situation, for whatever reason, we care about deck control and trashing cards a lot more than our opponent does.
So I think the biggest example of that is if your opponent gets another card that trashes, then, the Bishop is going to be less valuable for them than if they had not invested so much in trashing. Now, that doesn't... I mean, maybe you also get that other card, so maybe that card is better at trashing, but you could get the Bishop maybe in addition to it, and the Bishop is doing a little more for you in this case.
Yeah, and that's fair, especially if the trasher in question is non-terminal, because again, the bishop is terminal, so like, if we're talking about a non-terminal trasher like Forager, I think that's a little more of a likely situation.
Or like Lookout. You could open with
something like that.
both of those on your 3-hand, get the bishop on the 4-hand, and it's a little bit better than, just opening Lookout, or Forager, or something like that. But even then, it's still a little dicey,
Yeah, but it might not be better. Like,
Right.
I wanna just come out here and say this, and like, there are very few rules where I'm just gonna come out and say like, yeah, you can just apply this to your games of Dominion. Don't open bishop. I'm gonna say I'm getting on that pedestal, and I'm gonna say it, and like, I don't think I'm breaking any ground here, but like, I think you could apply this to 99 out of 100 games of Dominion you're gonna play. Don't open with a bishop. Just don't do it.
So my rule is don't open with a bishop unless you're going to win the game with those VP tokens.
That you get from the bishop.
Yeah, from the VP token from the bishop.
And that's, of course, assuming that that's the best way to build that deck, is opening with a bishop.
Sure. So, yeah, you have to have all the assumptions for, like, hey, I want a bishop, I can't do better. But also, like, you have to know before the game starts that you're going to win the game with VP tokens from bishop.
Yeah.
And that's really hard to know.
Yeah, it is. It is definitely. Yeah. So, you usually are not going to open with a bishop. So in that situation where we're talking about opening with like bishop and lookout as opposed to lookout, man, opening lookout feels bad. But between lookout and bishop lookout, I might go lookout.
Yeah, like I might get the bishop if it's really important for me to hit 4 a couple of times because maybe that dollar is super important, or maybe I feel like there's some like peddler shenanigans, and it looks like, the piles are going to be super low. Well, peddler's really great with bishop also.
Yeah, right.
So, like, those VP tokens are going to be relevant in that game because it could end fast and I want to start getting them sooner. And then also the bishop is going to be good later on. Like, these are things that would push me towards opening bishop. And you kind of need all of that.
Yeah, and, like, in general, I think we can agree that, like, bishop is a card that gets better the later the game goes. It's a really good card later on in the game. Now, there are definitely some factors, though, that make it better earlier on in the game, and most of those have to do with ability to capitalize on its trashing more than your opponent can.
Yeah. So there's a couple of other ways that you can do that. So for example, like if you're drawing a lot of cards, and when I say drawing a lot of cards, I'm just talking about plus cards here.
Yeah.
So if the cards that you have when you start your buy phase are just different cards than what you started your hand with, so you played some cantrips or you played some other things that gave you plus cards, like that's really good for bishop because now my opponent could be sitting there with these cards that he doesn't want to trash in his hand. And here I am at the end of my turn, and what I have left in my hand is all stuff I want to trash. Now I'm getting value out of this.
Yeah, and what that comes down to is how many cards did you look at to decide which one you wanted to line up with your bishop and trash. And of course, your inherent advantage as the person playing the bishop is that you get to play it whenever you want in your turn, meaning, like Adam said, you could have drawn some cards in the meantime, whereas if they want to trash cards off of your bishop, they're stuck with whatever the 5 that they got to look at when they drew their hand.
Yeah, so I think the best time for bishop in this case is, well, I mean, not in the opening, maybe 2 or 3 shuffles in when you're starting to get to that situation. Now you want to be drawing and seeing that bishop.
Yeah, so like that concept of the bishop being better for the person playing it from a trashing perspective definitely gets magnified every time you shuffle your deck, because earlier I said you're really likely at the beginning of the game to have cards in your hand that you want to trash at any given time. That becomes less true later on. So like if you are unlikely to just randomly have cards in your hand that you want to trash, it means that being able to play the bishop and trash cards that you drew in the middle of your turn is that much more valuable.
Right. So, I mean, this leads you to wait a little bit to get your trasher.
Yeah.
Obviously, that feels kind of bad because we've talked about this before. The best time to trash is as early as possible.
Yeah.
And you want to be opening with cards with trash. And, since bishop is bad at that, you don't want to open with it. And so this isn't great. So really the use case for this, it just seems like when bishop is the only trashing.
Right.
I'm gonna try and get it a couple turns, a couple shuffles in, so that I'm not on the bad end of this transaction.
And when bishop is the only trashing, I again want to draw your attention to the fact that you're helping your opponent a lot of the time as much as you're helping yourself.
Yeah.
And that gets mitigated, that aspect, the more times both people have shuffled their decks.
Right, that's true.
There's another case where you can definitely limit the amount of choices that your opponent has to trash while maximizing your own, and that has to do with playing with your relative hand sizes. Like, if you have the ability to play a discard attack on your opponent before you play your bishop, that definitely gives you a bit of an advantage as well.
Sure, and so, I mean, you probably have some pretty good deck control by that point.
Yeah.
If you're able to do something like that. That kind of deck control is really easy to get if you're able to trash cards, so this is still a little crunchy. But that would just prompt me to build the deck in a different way. I would build to have some draw first, and then once I'm able to get that discard attack online, then I would consider adding a bishop to my deck to increase the reliability at that point.
Right. I mean, bishop is certainly a trasher that synergizes with other trashing. Yeah, so it doesn't have to trash the cheap stuff. It can be trashing the stuff it wants to.
But in that case, I mean, are we really using the bishop to thin our deck? Maybe a little bit, but...
right. We might be using it to completely get the lid off the jar, but the steward is what did the heavy screwing.
Yeah. That's what I always say.
Yeah.
The steward did the heavy screwing.
Yeah. So... like, maybe you've noticed that all of these use cases for bishop really make it shine when you have access to villages and to draw. And that's true. Like, bishop as a trasher loves villages and draw, but it loves it for another reason more. Bishop really shines when we talk about really what the card is for, which is gaining VP chips.
Saving us from our sins? That
Saving,
kind of love?
Yeah, by giving us VP chips.
Yeah. I mean, that's very thematic.
Yeah, no, like when you go to a church, that's really what's happening is you're gaining VP.
Yeah, if the church has a bishop.
Yes.
If you're going to a church that has a chapel, completely different.
Yes.
Yep.
I don't know much. I don't know enough to know if that makes any sense or not.
It does.
Okay.
It makes sense in the Dominion theme world.
What is a chapel?
It's a 2-cost action?
No, I mean like an IRL.
I don't know, it's like a church.
Does it have a bishop?
Some do.
What's a bishop?
It's like a dude in the church.
Is it like... Is the bishop the same... Is the bishop the guy with like the white collar and the black shirt?
I mean, I guess some bishops might... I think bishops wear something fancier than that.
Okay, well, I mean, this one clearly is.
Yeah. Bishop's a higher ranking than the typical priest types that wear the collar shirt.
Oh.
From what I know.
Nice. Good for him.
Yeah, so anyway...
Yeah, so that's what he costs for.
Yeah, that's definitely
so,
it. So, like, you said Bishop likes villages and draw, and that's because, it's a payload card, and payload cards like it when you can draw them and play them. Right?
Yes.
So,
it's high-level stuff, yeah. I know.
the payload is, of course, VP tokens, and to get the best value out of that, you want to trash expensive things.
Yeah. It definitely behooves you to trash things that cost a lot of coins with Bishop because it gets you more points. Try to keep up. This is really complicated stuff we're getting into
here. You would prefer even numbers of coins, right? So you're getting the best value.
Right.
It feels bad to trash a silver to your bishop, but it feels good to trash gold with your bishop.
It feels really good to trash gold with your bishop.
So yeah, that means you want gold gainers. Great synergy.
Yeah, so gold gainers in particular have amazing synergy with bishop because, like, trashing a gold with a bishop is usually the best case scenario for it.
Yeah, I feel like you're getting the best value out of it.
Yeah.
Hopefully you didn't have to jump through too many hoops to get that gold, and then you trash it, and then you have 4 VP, and you didn't have to put a bad card in your deck to do that.
Yeah, the reason that we look at Bishop and then look for easy ways to gain gold, the reason Bishop and gold are so intertwined is that...
thematic.
It's thematic, but it's also that gold is the most expensive card that a gainer in Dominion names. Like, gold is the most expensive. Like, there's no card that says gain province. Whereas, like, gold is a card that some cards just let you gain. So that's really good with Bishop, because then you can trash it, etc.
Right. So, I mean, there's the obvious gold gainers. There are other gainers that, like, they work. I mean, Ironworks can gain you a 4 cost, and, I mean, that's fine.
Yeah.
But getting 3 points is still pretty sweet. Obviously, it's not as well as gold, but you can do great things by doing that.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing else in the game that lets you gain a card costing 6 other than Wish, except for gold gainers. So, like, you'll see Bishop and gold holding hands. They're tight.
Yeah, they're BFFs.
Yeah.
So, like, I mean, the gold gainers are the best synergies, and I think some of the other best synergies out there for Bishop would include Fortress. That's its own monster right there.
Bishop Fortress is
really good.
Kind of centralizing to the board most of the time.
Yeah.
Like, you kind of build your whole deck around that synergy usually.
Yeah, pretty much when that happens.
Yeah.
Rats, pretty good.
Yeah, Rats, I will say, like, that deck really, Bishop and Rats needs to have, like, some other goal in mind as well. Because, like, the Bishop and Rats alone can score a ton of points, but, like, it's also not doing a whole lot else, and so, like, the person who's focusing on something else maybe has a little more control over the game if you don't have some other thing that you're building to with your Bishop and Rats.
If all you're doing is sending Toby off to a better place, then...
don't get me wrong, it's a ton of points, but, like...
And Toby likes it there.
But, like, you have no, like, real endgame potential.
Yeah.
Like... So you need to have some other plan there. Whereas Bishop Fortress is like infinite VP, so that's a little more centralizing.
Yeah, I think Peddler talked about that synergy before, and
Yeah.
probably Quarry. I mean, if you can buy things for cheap and then trash them for expensive, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
And Tomb, woo! Yeah.
I'd say Haggler too, just because you buy something and it gets you a lot of cost with your
It's a gainer, right? I mean, if you're gaining a gold with Haggler, you're happy. And if you're gaining something that costs less, you're less happy.
Yes,
I'd say that holds true for a lot of gainers. I mean, we can name all of them for sure.
Yeah.
I guess trashing VP cards is okay, but, like, I mean, you had to buy those, and those are usually hard to buy or, like, gain them. So it's hard.
Yeah, so this is a thing with Bishop. Like, it adds these points to your deck, and it doesn't increase the number of cards, of stop cards in your deck by doing it. In fact, it removes a stop card a lot of the time. So it doesn't make your deck any quote-unquote worse by giving you those points.
That's true. And there's a couple of decks that are kind of built on that principle to break that canonical rule of Dominion, where getting points makes your deck worse. Bishop can break that a lot, and I think the classical deck was called a golden deck.
Yeah.
Some people call any deck that does that a type of golden deck.
Right, any deck that can score, like, a province worth or similar worth of points every turn without making itself less reliable in any way. Basically continuing to 100% get those points every single turn with no chance to stall.
Sure, I mean, so, like, there's the classic golden deck where, you get Bishop and Chapel, and you just chuck everything, and then you end up with a deck of Bishop and Gold, Silver, and Province. So every turn you play Bishop, you trash the Province, you have 8, you buy Province.
Yeah, which you then trash next turn. And that nets you 5 points a turn, 6 on the last time you do it.
Yeah. So that, that deck is okay. It takes a while to build, even with Chapel, which is the fastest trashing in the game. But the big issue is that it gets wrecked pretty hard by a lot of different types of attacks.
Yeah, it gets wrecked by attacks. It also gets wrecked by something that outpaces it, which isn't that hard to do. So, like, the thing about the golden deck, and this kind of comes down to a pretty fundamental concept of Dominion and building decks and evaluating them, extra reliability isn't itself a boon. It makes you less likely to stall than your opponent, but if your opponent isn't going to stall anyway, it doesn't matter. Like, so you take this, like, that deck gets 5 points a turn. But there are plenty of ways to do more than that. Like, if I just buy a province, I get 6 points a turn.
6 is more than 5.
Yes. So, like, if I'm facing off against a Bishop Golden deck that has a 100% chance to get 5 points every turn, and I'm doing something else that's just buying a province, we'll assume I can only get 1. And I'm getting 6 points a turn, but I only have, like, a 75% chance to do it every turn. Man, that Bishop player is relying on me to stall, and if there's only a 25% chance to do that, I really like my odds to win that game. And if I don't stall, I win the game because I'm scoring more points. Reliability in itself, increasing reliability, has diminishing returns.
That's true, and I think that pinpoints on the other main weakness of these kind of decks. You sort of alluded to it earlier, but like you don't get any control over the end game. If I'm doing this Bishop Chapel Golden deck, I'm chowing down on a province every turn. And if that is not going to win me the game, there's nothing I can do about it. Like, I can Bishop my gold and buy a duchy, but, oh man, that's not great. Like, you're losing that game, because now you can't buy the last province.
Yeah, like, there's an interesting thing about thinning cards in general, which is that, like, thinning cards usually makes you more flexible to adapt and build the kind of deck that you want. But at a certain point, thinning makes you less flexible once you run out of building potential.
Yeah, this would be that point, right?
Yeah, right.
When you are so thin that you can't do anything else.
Yeah,
yep.
Right. And that's fine if you're going to win doing it, but... Hey.
Right. So then, the other classic golden deck was the Bishop Fortress deck, right?
Okay, yes.
I have 5 fortresses in my deck, and I have 4 bishops in my deck. I play 4 fortresses, and then I play 4 bishops, trashing the last fortress. And
over and over.
Yeah.
Because it comes back to your hand.
Right. And then I have 12 VP every turn.
Now, that is a different story because that VP per turn is really hard to exceed doing anything else.
12 is more than both 5 and 6?
I have to be getting 2 provinces every turn, and a deck that gets 2 provinces every turn, I would argue, is more likely to stall than a deck that's only trying to get 1.
Right. So that's definitely hard to compete with.
Yeah.
So you really need to outpace that, but also, you need to think about the fact that you have to get through all 8 provinces to end the game against a Bishop Fortress deck.
Yeah.
And so you need a plan for that. Now, fortunately, there's at least Bishop, right, to give you some points and keep you viable. So you're going to have that at your disposal, but 12 points a turn is a lot, and you're going to need something other than that 5 points per turn that you're getting.
Yeah, we're talking about these situations like using you, assuming you're on the other side of this, but like if you see Bishop Fortress, like what we're really getting across here is you should probably go for it.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Like this case of 12 points per turn is something that requires no other support from the kingdom whatsoever.
Oh, and if there is support, it just gets insane from there.
Right. So, like, these decks that we talked about, they're limited by draw.
Yeah.
They kind of assume that you can't draw any additional cards. If you can draw additional cards, then you should do that, because drawing cards is great.
Yeah. It's really good.
So, like, if I can play more bishops on that fortress every turn, then I'm getting more points every turn. And so if some guy over here built his 12 VP a turn Bishop Fortress deck, then I can build my 13 VP per turn, or 14 or 15 VP per turn Bishop Fortress deck. And that other guy, well, he can't end the game. All he can do is get 12 VP per turn. So I can just build my deck, and I can add more draw cards to it, and I can play lots more bishops, and eventually I'll be ahead by infinity points, because I can do this as long as I want.
Well, there's a rule that when one of you starves, the game's over.
Sure, I can get ahead by an arbitrarily large number of points, and just do whatever I want to win the game. So when there's the potential to draw more cards, usually that means there's a potential to score more points. And so, like, where the fortress split might have been very important in that Bishop Fortress mirror with no draw, all of a sudden, if there's more draw, then the Bishop split becomes more important, because that's your cap. That's one of the caps on how many points can I score per turn.
Yeah, so that's kind of when I talked earlier about the aspect of reliability for your deck having diminishing returns, that is assuming that you're capping out your deck's ability to deliver its payload. But like what Adam just mentioned is a situation where reliability kind of increases the payload and enables it, like the bishop split being important versus the fortress split being important. What that comes down to is, can you reliably draw all those bishops that you have and play them on fortresses?
I mean, it doesn't have to be 100% reliable,
Yeah.
as long as that percentage of stall is compensated for by the number of points you're scoring more per turn than your
Yeah.
opponent, right? So if my deck is 50% reliable and scores 15 points per turn versus 100% to get 12 points, that's not great. I'm either going to need more reliability or more points. So, I mean, you can think about that in the context of Bishop Fortress where it's infinite points per turn. But like, it doesn't have to be Fortress, right? You can just play a bunch of bishops and trash some stuff and you get a lot of points per turn. That's great.
I'm glad you said that, though, because there is, in my mind, a bit of a difference between Fortress and maybe a couple of other edge case things like huge gold gainers, stuff like that, and like most of the time with Bishop. Because Bishop Fortress scores infinite VP, and it scores enough of them that like it's viable a lot of the time to rely on to win the game.
Infinite VP is usually enough, yeah.
Yeah, but like most of the time with Bishop, it is extra points, and those extra points are really good, but they're not going to usually realistically comprise the bulk of your score, in my experience. So like the amount of times when Bishop points are most of my points, or like what I've used to actually win the game, are outnumbered by the times when I've used my lead from Bishop points to have a better endgame position. So that, in my mind, actually categorizes Bishop differently. Like, I think about these cards like Goons or Bridge Troll in a way that's like, those are my endgame payloads or my win condition. If I get enough of those in play, I can use them to win the game. Whereas Bishop, I look at more as something to strengthen my endgame position. Like, a Butcher doesn't by itself win me the game, but the ability to trash Province, gain Province strengthens my endgame position. Like, so those extra points I get from Bishop are more supplementary than game winning.
Right. So I think that's a really good point. Bishop and Goons, I mean, they're both payload cards, and they're both, like, what wins you the game, right? Because they give you points. However, that highlights a difference in the role that they can play in your deck aside from just that. Right?
Yeah.
It's a more specific thing.
And I think the main actionable advice that you take away from that is how much you build to it. Right? Like, I'm willing to build around getting a bunch of bridges and Goons around it. I'm willing to sacrifice all else to do that. Whereas building to Bishop, it has its limits for utility, and those limits are like, how many points are Bishop proportionate to what I'm buying in points from the supply?
Sure, like if I can get enough points from just Bishop
Yeah.
to outpace what my opponent is doing, obviously do that.
Yeah.
But if your opponent is playing well, then that's going to be hard, and you need to do some other stuff.
Yeah. So, I think that, like, we can look at that and say that Bishop is potentially more important in games with just Province than it is in games where you'll see Colony or Dominate. Not to say you won't buy Bishop in those games, but, like, the Bishop points are maybe going to be more impactful in the case where we're looking at Provinces versus Dominate or Colonies winning the game.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, just because the points matter more proportionally.
Yeah.
So that's about all I have to say about Bishop.
Yep.
Did you have anything else you wanted to get in there?
Nope. That's all I got, man.
Definitely let us know if you think that there would be anything else you'd want to cover on Bishop, anything that you think we may have missed, or fun games with Bishop that you've had.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like Bishop.
Yeah, I love the card. I think it's a super high skill card, too.
Yeah, for sure. I remember when I first was playing with Bishop IRL,
Yeah.
like, I didn't even bother to read the part where other people
Other
would trash
people-
the card. And, like, they didn't either. So, like, I would just play Bishop, and I would trash cards. I'm like, this is great! This is OP!
Yeah, I know. This is great.
And then one day they figured out they could do it, and I started losing. I was like, what is this?
Yeah, it sucks when, like, you read a card and then you start losing because you read it more.
Man, that's rough.
Yeah.
I wish I could go back to cheating.
Yeah, me too.
It's like in Spirit Island when, like, we thought... oh man,
It's
we
like-
can do this OP thing, and then you read the rule book and it turns out you can't.
Or when Jessica thought the Candlestick Maker drew.
Yeah, drew a card.
Yeah.
Or like the opposite of when we were playing Pandemic Legacy and we thought we could only put the gray cubes in a city as much as the population was, and then we got wrecked super hard 4 games in a row.
This is season 2.
And then I read the rule book,
Yeah.
and then we started winning again.
Yeah.
It was super great.
It's great when you get the rules right to a game.
Yeah.
It's precious little that happens. So
You should read the rules to games when you play them, by the way. Do that.
That's the moral of this story, and we're sticking to it.
Yeah, that's the whole point of the podcast. Remember when Jake said that like Bishop is bad at trashing, good at VP? That was the point. That was a lie. This is the point.
Read the rule. Read the card.
Yeah, and
RTFC.
and so that goes into our raffle this week, right?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yep. Good time. So we have a kingdom here with
Yeah.
Bishop in it, right? And we decided upon request from one of our listeners,
Yeah.
to just choose 2 expansions
Yeah.
for the cards for this kingdom. So we picked Prosperity and Dark Ages.
Yeah. So like we definitely wanted to keep this confined to those 2 expansions, so that we
So
didn't
when
have
you
people.
take your Dominion
Yeah.
cards to work to play this with all your buddies,
Yeah.
you don't have to take 10 boxes of cards. You just take 2 boxes of cards.
Yeah. There you go.
So great.
Yeah. And your buddies will appreciate it too because they don't have to stare at this big pile of cardboard.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
hate cardboard. I
So-
love cardboard.
I mean, obviously this kingdom is going to have Bishop in it.
Yeah.
Oh,
Do you want me to read it?
I was going to ask if you wanted to let us know what else it might have.
Okay, sure. So we have Lone, Bishop, Procession, Scavenger, Wandering Minstrel, Band of Misfits, Counterfeit, Pillage, Royal Seal, Hunting Grounds, and we have Shelters. Once again, for our audio-only listeners, Lone, Bishop, Procession, Scavenger, Wandering Minstrel, Band of Misfits, Counterfeit, Pillage, Royal Seal, Hunting Grounds, and Shelters. Do you like what I did there? I was trying to be just like you and read
Yeah.
the Kingdom. Yeah, it's pretty
Yeah, just mispronounce one card every time.
good. Yeah.
It was
Pretty
good. Yeah.
That was good.
Um,
I think Bishop's pretty good here.
so I want to give a little bit of backstory into how we picked this kingdom. Kingdom was exactly the way you saw it before, except it had Market Square in it. And Adam said, "This kingdom's really good here," and I said, "Yeah, mostly because we have Market Square, though." And Adam said it would be really good even without Market
I
Square.
think Bishop would be really good
And
even
I
without
said-
Market Square.
I'm not so sure, and I still think you get a bishop.
I think Bishop's really good here.
Okay, so let's see. What else could you do though?
You draw a whole bunch of cards and you can Bishop some stuff.
So you could draw a bunch of cards with Wandering Minstrel and Hunting Grounds, and Procession speeds your build along, and
Yeah. Super great. You can like trash some stuff and then buy stuff back if your opponent's just going for points. And I feel like you're going to be able to outpace
Bishoping.
decks that have a lower payload doing that.
Bishoping Hunting Grounds is a pretty big burst of points too.
It's pretty sweet. You can get a lot of points that way, man.
Yeah, because you bishop the Hunting Grounds and get 4, and you get 3 more. That's 7. It's more than a province, which is 6.
Yeah. So that's like 55 points.
Yeah.
Also, the deck that does this has options of getting a Pillage for if your opponent decides to go hard for green. You can really punish them by getting a Pillage, and then
Yeah.
their spoils will help you buy more things to Bishop in case you need to catch up in points. So I think Bishop is super important, and you need to go pretty hard for Bishop and get a lot of points from Bishop, because if you rely too much on green cards, you could find yourself in a rough sitch.
There's the converse of that is kind of true too, though. Like if you see your opponent building entirely toward Bishop, like there is the aspect once they commit too hard to that to maybe starting to green and getting enough of a lead on them that they are going to have trouble.
Oh, I think you just lose that game to Pillage. I think Bishop is just really strong here. I think you have to build that deck.
Okay, this is going to depend a little bit on the Wandering Minstrel split too. I'm assuming Wandering Minstrels are going to pile every game
I think
that
this-
we play of this.
I think this split's very important. I think you
Yeah.
keep your Necropolis.
Oh, I didn't
Yep.
think about the Necropolis. I forgot that we have that. And I'm going to agree with that. I think even if you have the opportunity to trash your Necropolis early,
I don't think you do it.
But you probably keep it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy, but
I mean,
you do.
if my opponent plays straight up big money, maybe I get rid of it, but I think it's going to be important if there's any competition for that Wandering Minstrel pile. I also think getting a lot of Hunting Grounds is pretty important.
Yeah.
Remember from the Hunting Grounds episode, I think it rings true here, you want to get more copies of Hunting Grounds than it takes to draw your deck.
Yeah.
For reliability purposes, and then they're also great to have around as bishop options.
That's true. It is a huge burst of points to Bishop of Hunting Grounds. So, like, one question I have that's kind of interesting in my mind is that the first time you hit 5 or more, you're going to either buy a Counterfeit, which is what I think is most likely.
Yep.
You might also buy either a Band of Misfits or a Royal Seal, though. The Royal Seal speeds up your building by letting you top deck the things you buy. That's not to be discounted. But the Band of Misfits is actually probably a pretty decent card here. Before the Wandering Minstrels pile, it could be a Wandering Minstrel, which is great. It could also be a Procession if you happen to line it up with a card that you want to process. So
I think Band of Misfits is a good card here. I think you want it. Your first 5,
Probably Counterfeit.
Pretty sure goes to Counterfeit.
Yeah.
I would only consider getting a Royal Seal. I wouldn't consider getting it before the Counterfeit. But I think the Royal Seal is only good if you're not contested. It mostly because like the only cards you can top deck are the ones you buy that turn, and if you're contested on Wandering Minstrels, they're just going to be gone lightning fast, and that's the card you want to top deck. So, if there's any contest, I don't think the Royal Seal is going to end up being good.
So I have an answer in my mind, but I'm curious to hear what you were going to say. What's your open here on a 3/4?
Scavenger Loan.
Yeah, I was actually about to say the exact same thing.
Yeah.
I think Scavenger Loan is probably my favorite opener.
Yeah. Loan's super great, helps you get thin, and it synergizes with the virtual money from Scavenger.
Yeah.
That virtual money matters because Loan doesn't like to be in the same deck as higher value treasures.
Because you might hit them with Loan.
Right, you might skip them with Loan, and that's not
it's a
great.
100% chance to happen if you're having a bad day.
Or if your name's Adam Horton.
Yeah.
But
you're always having a bad day. Yeah.
But eventually, like, you're going to run out of coppers. The real thing is, it's not that you're going to hit your silver and skip it, but it helps your loan, it helps line up your loan with coppers because it doesn't have other things that it can hit.
Yeah,
right. So it's going to help make sure every time I play that loan, I will be finding a copper to trash. And then eventually I'll counterfeit it.
Which, like, that sucks with Loan if you are talking about a really high-impact terminal that you need to play really early, like your Masquerade or your Jake of all trades. Like, opening those with Loan feels worse because you might skip the thing you wanted to play. But, like, Scavenger, skipping your Scavenger isn't something you want to do. You're not happy, but...
At least you still get to trash a copper.
Yeah, you get to trash the copper. The Scavenger's main purpose was to cycle you to your loan again anyway, so...
And also, Scavenger Loan is an opening that gives you a pretty good shot of hitting 5 to get that counterfeit. To accelerate the copper thinning. Once you've thinned those coppers, you're going to be able to do a lot more cool stuff with your deck. You can start adding a bishop in by that point to get rid of those estates and then get your draw cards happening.
On a 5/2, I am torn between Band of Misfits nothing or Counterfeit nothing.
Yeah, both of those are pretty good openings.
They're both good.
I think I would get the Counterfeit.
I think so too, but man, the bomb is actually pretty sexy over there.
So, like, what is the cool thing you want to play your Band of Misfits as? It's either Bishop or Scavenger, right?
It's either Bishop or Scavenger.
I don't think Bishop is really the answer.
No,
even though trashing
like
the
we
estate
said,
is sexy,
opening with the Bishop is bad.
Right. So it's Scavenger, right? And why is Scavenger good to play early so you can hit 5 to get your Counterfeit? Like, I want the counter. The Counterfeit's just as good at helping me hit 5, so like I'm in with the Counterfeit.
Or a Royal Sealed. No, yeah, the Counterfeit's probably the best thing.
If you have perfect shuffle luck, you might go with the Royal Seal.
Yeah, no, if you get to assume perfect shuffle luck, the Royal Seal's really good.
It could be pretty good. Yeah, you draw down turn 3, then top deck the other 5-er. And now you've got this Royal Seal in your deck that's pretty good.
Yeah, no, that's really good.
Yeah, you can like top deck Pillages or whatever, and no, that's not good.
Let's go back to the real world for a minute. So the Counterfeit also has the benefit of being plus buy. So if you do get to, your high aspiration dreams, you might have If you get the chance to buy 2 Wandering Minstrels in one turn, I think you do it without thinking. I think you just do it. Probably.
I mean, maybe I could get Wandering Minstrel Hunting Grounds, but sure. I mean, getting multiple good cards for your deck in one turn is super great.
I'm talking Wandering Minstrels in particular just because of how I think pivotal they're going to be in that split, but...
I mean, that's true. You want to get a lot of them, and at some point you're just going to prioritize that over putting the best card in your deck.
If I had a choice between buying Wandering Minstrel Hunting Grounds and buying Wandering Minstrel on this board, I don't want to say I would never take the Hunting Grounds because it's good, obviously, but, like, if my opponent's going for a similar deck that I'm going to, I might just prioritize getting the Minstrels.
Well, the question you ask yourself is, that Hunting Grounds, is that enough of a good card for my deck that I think it's going to pay for itself and give me a better turn that gets me another Wandering Minstrel in the future?
That's true.
And if the Wandering Minstrels are not close to being empty, then the answer is likely yes, and you probably get it. And if the Wandering Minstrels are at like maybe 3 or 4 or less, then probably not.
By the time I have that turn, I have to assume the Wandering Minstrels are going to be close to empty, though.
I don't know.
But we'll see.
I mean, you don't need to make that assumption. You look at the situation you're in,
Yeah.
and you ask yourself the question.
Yeah.
I don't know how likely that is, but I know in any given situation how to find what the best thing to do is.
Well, yeah, at any rate, I think that the Counterfeit, it's leaning me more toward your first 5 being Counterfeit.
Yeah. Also, I mean, Procession is pretty good for gaining the Hunting Grounds. You'll put some Band of Misfits in your deck. You'll probably process that Scavenger at some point, be processing Bishops, processing Bombs or Pillages to get some more Hunting Grounds. You might even process Hunting Grounds.
I think you'll process Procession more than once.
Yeah, for sure.
And that'll probably to process Hunting Grounds.
I think the only thing you don't process is Wandering Minstrel or Necropolis.
No, you need to keep those around.
Yep. Yeah.
You might process Necropolis depending on how things are going.
If you're not contested on Wandering Minstrels, sure. Or if you're going to end the game and you need the terminal space.
Or like if you are, even if like you are contested. Oh, okay. I mean, these are we're getting into weird nitpicky things that are going to be game specific. So
sure. Yeah, but we publish at least one other video of us playing the game of These Kingdoms on the YouTube channel, so you can check that out. The YouTube channel is just Adam Horton 01 on YouTube, or you can just go to adamhorton.com, go to the blog there. The blog has some pages with links to all of the other sources of content, so you can find the podcast on whatever podcasting service you want, get a direct RSS link there if you prefer to do it that way. You can find the YouTube channel, you can find a link to our Discord channel.
Yeah.
And you can talk at us there or on the forums that are linked to from that blog as well. All of our contact information is going to be there on the adamhorton.com site, but also if you're watching this on YouTube, in the description of this video. And also, thank you for doing that. Without you, the viewers, we're just talking to ourselves. And now that I got a chance to actually interact with one of you in person and know that you exist, to anyone else that also exists, thank you for not only existing, but also listening to the podcast.
Well said.
Yeah.
So,
let us know what you think about this kingdom or about anything we talked about on this podcast.
Definitely. I'll second what Adam said. A big thank you to all of our listeners, anybody who is enjoying our content, and we will see you next time.
Yeah, smile later.
I never had a bar mitzvah either, though, so I'm not really into the whole ceremony thing.
I went to a lot of bar mitzvahs and bat mitzvahs.
Man, I went to a couple too, and I never got to have one because I couldn't. I actually failed Hebrew school.
Oh, nice!
I'm the worst Jew ever.
Wow.
And I literally failed at being a Jew, and so I never had my bar mitzvah. So in the eyes of the Jewish temple, I'm not a man.
That's unfortunate.
I'm still a boy.
Yeah.
26-year-old boy over here. This is great.
That's not weird.
Which probably imparts a lot into why I like anime so much, right?
We figured it out.
Yeah, we figured out what's wrong with me on Making Luck. a self-reflection podcast.
Welcome
So-
to Making Luck, a self-reflection podcast.
Yeah.